Chapter 2057. Mother, if you know these ingredients, I'll be able to detoxify your poison very quickly. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face was filled with a joyful smile. She never thought that Mu Lingbing would be so meticulous, actually remembering all of this. In this way, the most difficult problem could be solved. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao looked at each other with joy in their eyes. They never thought that they would be able to detoxify their poison one day. Bailey Hongzhuang handed a brush and paper to Mu Lingbing. Mother, think carefully and write it down. Although Mu Lingbing tried her best to remember all of this, it wasn't easy for her to remember so much time had passed and so many poisons had been used. Your mother has a photographic memory. As long as she wants to remember something, she'll never forget it. Lan Yunxiao's face rippled with an elegant and charming smile. Mu Lingbing was gifted with this ability. Because of this, Mu Lingbing had an incomparable advantage in terms of cultivation. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes widened with surprise. She never expected Mu Lingbing to have such a unique and powerful ability. It was truly astonishing. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Lan Yunxiao were talking, Mu Lingbing had already recorded the ingredients on a piece of paper. She didn't pause at all, as if she'd always remembered everything. She slowly wrote down the names and ingredients of each poison one after another. The three beasties watched in amazement. No wonder Master was so powerful. Master's parents weren't just ordinarily powerful either. Mu Lingbing wrote very quickly. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest maintained their silence as they watched Mu Lingbing write. After a while, Mu Lingbing handed the brush and paper to Bailey Hongzhuang. It's all here. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the content written on the paper, and her face suddenly had a clear look of understanding. Just as she'd predicted, the antidotes she'd created were correct. Other than that, there were a few other poisons that she'd only vaguely guessed at and wasn't completely sure. Now that she understood the situation, she was able to prescribe the right medicine. Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, unsure if she could do it. After all, Yuxiqing was too famous. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Father, Mother, don't worry. I'll be able to detoxify all your poisons soon. Both Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao's eyes lit up with joy at her words. They thought they didn't have long to live, but when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang, they couldn't help but feel sad. They'd just met, and soon they'd be separated. However, they now had the hope to continue living. How could they not be happy about that? Father, Mother, Hongzhuang, Yunyun's Bing, and Lan Yunxiao's, Mother's and Lan Yunxiao's, Bailey Yu's, Yunyun, Yumu, to Hongzhuang. This it looked like she was going to win this battle between her and Yuxiqing. Yuxiqing would never have imagined that Mu Lingbing had memorized all the ingredients. With her skills, it wouldn't be difficult for her to create the appropriate antidote. Lan Yunxiao and Lan Yunxiao took the antidote and didn't doubt its effects at all. They directly swallowed it. Chapter 2058. You've been poisoned for a long time, and the poison is stubborn in your body. My antidote can detoxify the poison, but the process will be painful, Bailey Hongzhuang explained slowly. She also wanted to alleviate some of Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's pain, but this was something that could only be resolved by them. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing smiled nonchalantly at Bailey Hongzhuang's words. What kind of torture had they not endured all these years? The pain of detoxifying poison was nothing to them. After all, detoxifying some of the poison would lessen their pain in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally understood Lan Yunxiao and Lan Yunxiao's thoughts. This pain shouldn't be difficult for them to bear. Very quickly, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing felt a burst of pain and itchiness in their bodies. The antidote passed through their cells and removed every bit of the poison from their bodies. Bailey Hongzhuang stood guard at the side to prevent any accidents from happening. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be much of a problem with detoxifying these poisons at the same time. An hour later, PFFF, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing spat out blood clots. However, the blood clots had turned completely black and fell to the ground with a sizzling sound. Just by looking at them, they knew how terrifying the poison was. yet it had remained in their bodies all these years. It was truly shocking. After seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang also felt relieved. Father, mother, do you feel better? Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing looked at each other. After enduring so much pain, their faces were pale. However, at this moment, after Bailey Hongzhuang's reminder, they really felt that their bodies were a bit more relaxed, and the pain that had been accompanying them was also reduced a bit. As expected, it's much better, Mu Lingbing exclaimed at Bailey Hongzhuang. At this moment, she no longer doubted Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang was able to create these antidotes without understanding the ingredients. This was not something an ordinary doctor could do. Yishuan, I didn't expect your medical skills to be so formidable. Lan Yunxiao smiled. As for his daughter, he really admired her very much. Yishuan, how did you survive all these years? Mu Lingbing couldn't help but be curious when she saw how outstanding her daughter was. She wanted to know every step of Hongzhuang's growth over the years. Seeing Mu Lingbing's curious expression, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and said, Mother, you've just neutralized some of the poison and your bodies have been drained. Let's take a good rest for now. I'll tell you about my experiences over the years next time. Hearing this, Mu Lingbing nodded. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang had said, she did feel weak and exhausted. She still had plenty of time to spend with Bailey Hongzhuang in the future. The future was long, so there was no need to rush. After Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao rested, Bailey Hongzhuang instructed the three beasts to keep an eye on the situation before leaving the room. Since she already knew the ingredients of these poisons, she naturally had to create the antidote as soon as possible. The sooner she created the antidote, the sooner her parents could be relieved of their pain. She was no stranger to some of these poisons. Chapter 2059. Bailey Hongzhuang studied it carefully. After thinking about what materials she needed, she went to the alchemy hall. She had to get these herbs back first before she could configure the antidote. Bailey Hongzhuang walked all the way to the alchemy hall. Passing by the resource hall, she found that it was crowded and lively. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a while and found that today was the day to receive cultivation resources. No wonder there were so many people coming today. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Now she was not in the mood to receive these things. She just wanted to detoxify her parents as soon as possible. As long as her parents could be detoxified a day earlier, they could end the pain earlier. Xia Jiqing and the others have been worried about Bailey Hongzhuang since Bewitching came back. However, they had never had the chance to see Bewitching. Naturally, they had no way to inquire about these things. Just as Xia Jiqing received the cultivation resources and was about to return to the Vermilion Bird Hall, she suddenly saw a familiar figure. Her eyes could not help but be filled with excitement. Hongzhuang. Chapter 2060. When I came back, I was delayed because of some things. I made everyone worry about me. I'm really sorry. Bailey Hongzhuang's light and pleasant voice had a trace of apology. This time, she really put all her attention on her parents and forgot to tell Xia Jiqing and the others. It was really her thoughtlessness. Everyone still had some complaints in their hearts, but at this moment, after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the dissatisfaction in their hearts completely dissipated. Hongzhuang was different from them. Hongzhuang had more things to do than them. Moreover, they had been with Hongzhuang for so long and always felt that Hongzhuang had some secrets. In this regard, no one said anything. It's okay, Hongzhuang. As long as you are okay, we can rest assured. Xia Jiqing said with a smile. Originally, she was complaining about Hongzhuang, but now listening to Hongzhuang's explanation, she was a little embarrassed. Dongfang Yu and the others nodded. Yes, as long as you are okay. Gong Shaoqing, Yuan Xiaoman, and the others all had smiles on their faces. Boss, I haven't seen you for a while. You must have made a lot of progress, right? Yuan Xiaoman's face was filled with a curious smile. Every time she saw her boss, she couldn't help but marvel at her progress. Speaking of which, she had always been with her boss before. She didn't understand how her boss cultivated and how her progress was so much faster than them. As Yuan Xiaoman's voice fell, everyone's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. It must be known that during the time they stayed in Tian Gang's sect, they also didn't relax for a moment. Now, they were different from before. The strength of the cultivators around them was very strong. If they didn't work hard, the ranking on the list of famous pillars was clearly written. Every time their ranking dropped, it would make them feel ashamed. Therefore, they could only work as hard as they could to prevent their rankings from dropping. Now, they finally understood why the cultivators in the sects could cultivate so much faster than the cultivators in the secular world. It was not only because of the difference in cultivation resources, but also because of a sense of urgency. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. There is not much change. Previously, she mainly cultivated her own control of Yuan Qi in Wuji Palace. She only improved her cultivation on the Heaven Stairway at night. Later on, she focused all her energy on developing explosives and rescuing her parents. Her cultivation was delayed by quite a bit. As soon as this remark came out, Yuan Xiaoman and the others couldn't help but look at each other. Their eyes were filled with a strange color. This situation wasn't in line with Bailey Hongzhuang's style at all. Although everyone had some doubts, they didn't say anything. Yuan Jixin smiled and said, "Boss, we are all working hard to catch up with you." Just as Yuan Jixin had said, Bailey Hongzhuang was the goal of all of them. Although the cultivators in the branch hall gave them a lot of pressure, their real motivation was Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was not stronger than theirs. However, everyone clearly came together, but Bailey Hongzhuang surpassed them by so much. Since Bailey Hongzhuang could do it, it proved that all of this was feasible. Therefore, they must work hard to not be left behind too much. Chapter 2061. Hongzhuang, where are you going? Gong Xiaoqing asked. They did not see Bailey Hongzhuang in the resource hall. Obviously, Bailey Hongzhuang did not come here to get cultivation resources from the resource hall. I'm going to the alchemy hall to buy some herbs, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone suddenly understood. For Bailey Hongzhuang, in addition to cultivation, there were also alchemy, inscription, and medical skills. Maybe Hongzhuang would mainly focus on alchemy during this time. So that's how it is. Gong Xiaoqing suddenly said. Hongzhuang, when will you go back to the Vermilion Bird Hall to cultivate? Xia Jiqing asked curiously. Bailey Hongzhuang had not appeared in the Vermilion Bird Hall since the last time she left. Her ranking was dropping little by little. I'll go back in a few days. I have some things to do recently. Her dark phoenix eyes were filled with thoughts. As a disciple of the Vermilion Bird Hall, it was indeed inappropriate for her to not return to the Vermilion Bird Hall for so long. Fortunately, Sitian had already greeted the Hall Master before, so there was nothing to do with it. Bailey Hongzhuang left after chatting with everyone for a while. She was really busy now. After Xia Jiqing and the others saw Bailey Hongzhuang leave, their faces were filled with doubts. I don't know what Hongzhuang is busy with these days. She seems to have lost some weight. Xia Jiqing sighed. She really hoped that she could help Hongzhuang, but now there was nothing she could do. This feeling was really depressing. Boss has always been very busy. When she is free, she will naturally contact us. Yuan Xiaoman was very optimistic. Boss's identity was not the same as theirs. As the sweetheart of the young sect master, Boss had to bear much more than them. Therefore, what they could do now was to understand Boss. In a few days, when Hongzhuang is free, she will definitely tell us everything. Dongfang Yu smiled brightly, his peach blossom eyes slightly raised. No matter what happened, he believed that Hongzhuang would always treat them as friends. After Bailey Hongzhuang left, her mind was also thinking about Xia Jiqing and the others. Looking at everyone's appearance today, it was obvious that everyone had adapted well in Tian Gang's sect, and she did not need to worry. As for the matter of her parents, she still needed to keep it a secret. Although she believed in Xia Jiqing and the others, she could not let her parents' lives. Yu Xiqing had placed all her attention on concocting the antidote, so she didn't have enough time to confirm the identity of the two corpses in the dungeon. Once Yu Xiqing came back to her senses, she might come to find Situ Yin to inquire. If someone leaked the news, the situation would be a lot more trouble. His parents were still so weak. Plus, once the Lan family knew about this, Lan Jingquang and his family would be prepared. Their plan wouldn't be so easy to carry out. Therefore, before her parents recovered, she could only hide this news. When Bailey Hongzhuang came to the alchemy hall, she saw that the alchemy hall was full of people. It was very lively. Chapter 2062. Although it was Bailey Hongzhuang's first time coming to Tiangang Sect's alchemy hall, she felt that it was very familiar. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang came to the place where medicinal herbs were sold and directly told the disciple the medicinal herbs she needed. After the disciple saw that Bailey Hongzhuang actually needed so many medicinal herbs, his eyes were also filled with a touch of surprise. Moreover, these medicinal herbs were of all kinds, and he actually couldn't see what they were for. However, he was no stranger to Bailey Hongzhuang in front of him. In fact, presumably the disciples of Tiangang's sect would not find it strange. Therefore, even if the disciple had doubts in his heart, he did not dare to neglect. After all, who dared to offend Tiangang sect's future young master's wife? Wasn't this courting death? Just as the disciple went to help Bailey Hongzhuang get the medicinal herbs, the conversation of the surrounding cultivators entered Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. In another month, the alchemist selection will begin. I don't know how many newcomers there will be in our alchemy hall this time. Yes, every time our alchemy hall recruits people, it's later than the other 4 halls. I hope a few junior sisters will come, haha. I heard that the selection this time is very big. Not only will they select newcomers, but even we will also have an assessment. What? Is it true or false? I accidentally heard it when the elders were talking. Although I'm not too clear about the details, I can guarantee that I didn't hear wrongly. In that case, we have to prepare early. If we don't perform well at that time, it will be terrible. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes also lit up after hearing everyone's conversation. In that case, Lu Qingyue would soon come to Tiangang sect to participate in the alchemist assessment. Everyone saw Lu Qingyue's infatuation with Gong Shaoqing. As early as when they left Kanglan School, Lu Qingyue had already said that she would definitely come when the time came. She believed that Lu Qingyue had been waiting for this alchemist assessment for a long time. However, this alchemist assessment seemed to be a little different. She believed that with Lu Qingyue's attainments in alchemy, she would definitely be able to pass this assessment. Regarding Lu Qingyue's persistence, she also very much admired. She also sincerely hoped that Lu Qingyue and Gong Shaoqing could be lovers and get married. That would be the best result. Originally, after Bai Junyu and Xia Jichen got together, she was a little worried about Yuan Xiaoman's mood. Fortunately, when he saw Yuan Xiaoman today, he saw that Yuan Xiaoman still had a lively appearance, without the slightest bit of discouragement or sadness. Although it may be that Yuan Xiaoman deliberately did not want to show it, on the other hand, it was related to Yuan Xiaoman's carefree personality. In short, everything was developing in a good direction. Bailey Hongzhuang was extremely happy. Very quickly, I have prepared all the herbs that Bailey Hongzhuang needs. Bailey Hongzhuang took the herbs, and a smile appeared on her face. Thank you. As soon as her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang turned and left the alchemy hall. However, the disciple who saw Bailey Hongzhuang smile looked at the back of Bailey Hongzhuang as she left. He was still immersed in Bailey Hongzhuang's smile and did not recover. Bailey Hongzhuang's outstanding appearance was well known, but everyone had only seen it once from a distance. Now that he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's warm smile, he understood why the young master liked Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 2063. After returning to the sect master's quarters, Bailey Hongzhuang dove into her room and began to concoct the antidote based on the poison. Lan Yinxiao and Mu Lingbing wouldn't be resting for long this time, so she hoped she could quickly concoct all the antidotes. Right now, she felt an indescribable satisfaction from being able to see Lan Yinxiao and Mu Lingbing's smiles. Kinship was just that peculiar. Seeing the other person happy made her feel even happier. Bailey Hongzhuang felt that after saving her parents, she had become even more passionate in doing things. It was as if there was an inexhaustible energy in her body. All of her hard work was for the sake of seeing their smiles. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang begin her research as soon as she returned, Bewitching stood outside the room and quietly watched Bailey Hongzhuang for a moment. His lips curled into a gentle and enchanting smile before he turned and left. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang now, even he could feel a kind of happiness. This kind of happiness could only be given to Hongzhuang by Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing. It was something he couldn't give. However, to be able to see Bailey Hongzhuang like this, he also had an indescribable satisfaction. When the three beasties saw this, they looked at each other and smiled. Master is full of fighting spirit right now. I think we should just wait patiently. Master won't be coming out for a while, Baisher said with a smile. Although Master was busier than before, they could feel that she was the happiest right now. I really hope that Master's parents can recover quickly. It would be best if they could recover their strength. Xiao He clasped her hands together and couldn't help praying. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were heroes in the past, so there was no need to mention their strength. However, now that they were in this state, even if the poison was cured, their strength couldn't compare to Lan Jingquang's. Speaking of which, Lan Jingquang and his family had really harmed Master's family. Definitely. Master is so powerful, so her parents must be powerful as well, Xiao Bai said with certainty. It firmly believed that everything could be resolved. Bailey Hongzhuang focused all her attention on the antidote. Looking at the various ingredients written down by Mu Lingbing, Bailey Hongzhuang, who was proficient in medicine, could understand the effects of these poisons after careful consideration. However, when she understood the true effects of these poisons, the hatred in her heart only deepened. Yu Xiqing truly had a heart as venomous as snakes and scorpions. Every single one of her poisons was extremely vicious. Once consumed, the person wouldn't immediately die, but they would suffer immense pain. Although Bailey Hongzhuang knew how to concoct poisons, she didn't use them often. Only when she met some extremely hateful people would she use such a method to punish them. However, Yu Yuzes had used all these poisons. She understood why her parents' health's the sect. If it weren't for the fact that their bodies were strong enough in the past, they would have lost their lives under the ravages of these poisons. Even though they'd managed to preserve their lives, their condition couldn't get any worse. Suppressing the hatred in her heart, Bailey Hongzhuang focused on concocting the antidotes. She made 2 portions of each antidote and placed them to the side. Chapter 2064. While Bailey Hongzhuang was concentrating on detoxifying Lan Yunxiao and Yu Yang's poison, Limitless Palace's Yu Linfeng and Nangong would also receive the news. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang and the others left for the Yu clan, Nangong Wu couldn't help but worry. She even regretted not following along. If she had followed along, then she wouldn't have to sit here and worry. Yu Linfeng looked at Nangong Wu's restless appearance and felt helpless. Nangong Wu had always been an impatient person. As long as she didn't know the result, she would be very anxious. After interacting with each other for so many years, he understood Nangong Wu's character very well. Don't worry. Since Sect Master went with Hongzhuang and the others, then there definitely won't be any problems. Hearing Yu Linfeng's words, Nangong Wu glanced at Yu Linfeng, her expression revealing some dissatisfaction. No matter what, you always have this expression. Isn't it better to be safe than sorry? Don't worry. What can happen if Sect Master is there? Yu Linfeng seemed very indifferent. The Yu clan's strength isn't weak, but you also know Sect Master's strength. Even if they don't succeed in saving them, leaving safely is definitely not a problem. After all, the Yu clan doesn't dare to rashly offend the Tiangang sect. Yu Linfeng's expression changed a bit. In his opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' plan had a high probability of success. There shouldn't be any mistakes. It's already a big problem that they didn't manage to save them. After Yu Xiqing knows about this, won't she immediately kill them to silence them? Hongzhuang definitely won't be able to take it. Nangong Wu couldn't help but think of Bailey Hongzhuang's face. Although Bailey Hongzhuang usually had a very indifferent appearance, she understood that Bailey Hongzhuang was a person who valued friendship and righteousness. If such a thing really happened, Hongzhuang would definitely be very sad. She didn't want to see such a scene. Yu Linfeng faintly sighed. Women always like to let their imaginations run wild. He felt that there wouldn't be so many accidents. Just as the two were talking, Gu Taihong appeared in front of them. Palace Master, Madam, a letter from Tiangong sect. Following Gu Taihong's voice, Nangong Wu's words, her eyes suddenly lit up. She immediately snatched the letter and impatiently opened the letter. Impatiently. Seeing Nangong Wu's actions, Gu Taihong was also stunned. His eyes were filled with a touch of astonishment. Yulin Feng, on the other hand, looked as if he had expected it. He waved his hand at Gu Taihong, indicating that there was nothing else. Seeing this, Gu Taihong then left. Nangong Wu couldn't wait to read the contents of the letter. After reading it, Nangong Wu couldn't help but laugh. Ha ha ha, this is too funny. The Yu clan is too unlucky. I really didn't expect Hong Zhuang to come up with such a despicable move. The Yu clan is probably mad at this moment. After reading the contents of the letter, Nangong Wu admired Bailey Hong Zhuang even more. In fact, she usually had a lot of despicable moves. She didn't expect Bailey Hong Zhuang to have even more despicable moves. Presumably, the Yu clan was completely dumbfounded at this moment. When Yulin Feng saw Nangong Wu suddenly laughing so happily, his eyes were filled with a touch of astonishment. He then said, "What is written on it that can make you laugh like this?" Chapter 2065. Yulin Feng looked at Nangong Wu suspiciously, waiting for Nangong Wu's reply. Hong Zhuang blew up the Yu clan's martial arts hall. Ha ha, she is indeed worthy of being the person that I have my eyes on. Yulin Feng was slightly startled, his eyes gradually widening. He had never thought that Hong Zhuang would be so daring to blow up the martial arts hall. That was the most important place in a cultivation family. However, thinking about it carefully, if the martial arts hall had been blown up, it would have attracted the attention of everyone in the Yu clan. Bailey Hong Zhuang's actions were also correct. Not only that, Hong Zhuang had also blown up the Yu clan's ancestral hall. I never thought that Hong Zhuang would be such a genius. I had only told Hong Zhuang to throw 2 sets of explosives to attract everyone's attention. I never thought that Hong Zhuang's move would be so powerful. The ancestral hall blew up. When Yulin Feng heard this result, his eyebrows couldn't help but tremble. It seemed that this disciple of his really couldn't be offended. The Yu clan would never have dreamt that there would be such a day. The martial arts hall was actually the most important place in the Yu clan. The ancestral hall was nominally the most important place in the Yu clan. Hong Zhuang really didn't miss anything, catching the Yu clan unprepared. So, Hong Zhuang and the rest have already returned to Tiangong sect safely? Yulin Feng asked. As the hidden power behind Bailey Hong Zhuang, it was best that he didn't personally send people to find out about this, so as to avoid exposing his identity. After all, their limitless palace and the Yu clan didn't have any interactions. If they suddenly sent people to find out about this, it would inevitably arouse suspicion. So, they have been waiting here for news. Nangong Wu nodded. They have already returned safely, but they told us that they can't come over for the time being. As she spoke, Nangong Wu handed the letter to Yulin Feng. She never thought that the explosive she made would have such a good effect. It really made her happy. Yulin Feng read through the contents of the letter again, and only then did he relax. I told you, they will definitely succeed. You don't have to worry about this. Yulin Feng's face was full of smiles. Now that Bailey Hong Zhuang was finally reunited with her parents, he couldn't help but feel happy for Bailey Hong Zhuang. Lan Yunxiao was originally a heroic figure, but it was a pity that he was persecuted and reduced to such a state. He remembered that when he was still a child in the Lan family, Lan Yunxiao was already the center of attention. When he was bullied, Lan had stood in front of him to protect him, and that was when his impression of Lan Yunxiao began. Although he didn't Yu in Nangong, he didn't Yu and use in the Yu clan. At that time, he had no parents and no one to protect him. If it wasn't for Lan Yunxiao, his life would be even more miserable. But not long after, he left the Lan family. Perhaps even Lan Yunxiao himself didn't remember him. But he remembered. In this huge Lan family, other than his parents, the only person he had a good impression of was Lan Yunxiao. When he found out about Lan Yunxiao's misfortune, he felt indignant and regretful. He originally wanted to become friends with Lan Yunxiao when he had the ability. Unfortunately, he didn't have the chance. But he didn't expect that he would take Lan Yunxiao's daughter as his disciple. Chapter 2066. Yu Linfeng felt that most of the time, everything was arranged by fate. If it wasn't for the guidance of the heavens, how could all of this happen so coincidentally? A heroic character like Lan Yunxiao shouldn't have lived his life like that. Fortunately, he had successfully left the Yu family. Although it wouldn't be easy to restore his former appearance, he believed that anyone who had seen Lan Yunxiao's boundless magnificence wouldn't doubt the possibility of him standing up again. Lan Jingquang was also an outstanding person, both in ability and talent. Unfortunately, Lan Jingquang's heart was too narrow. If Lan Jingquang could give up the position of house head and work together with Lan Yunxiao and his brother, the Lan family would be unprecedentedly powerful. However, there were many people in this world who harbored jealousy. After being suppressed for so many years, Lan Jingquang had long been unable to endure it. Regarding this, he was able to understand. However, if he could even be so ruthless to his own niece, then this Lan Jingquang was a little too deranged. Committing too much injustice leads to one's own destruction. Lan Jingquang would never have thought that the niece he had ruthlessly persecuted would grow up to be such an outstanding person. This time, Lan Jingquang had miscalculated. He wanted to imprison Lan Yunxiao for the rest of his life and let him see his success. However, he never thought that Lan Yunxiao would be able to make a comeback one day. As for Lan Jingquang's daughter, Lan Qingyan, Yu Linfeng had never seen Lan Qingyan's appearance, but he had heard of her. Even though Lan Qingyan's reputation was resounding and she was a famous genius, his intuition told him that Lan Qingyan was definitely not Bailey Hongzhuang's opponent. Even though there was still a gap between Bailey Hongzhuang and the genius cultivators nurtured by aristocratic families, he believed that this gap would continue to shrink. A child born in a wealthy family would never understand the pain and hardship of climbing up from the bottom. Logically speaking, these two identities shouldn't have any intersection, but it happened. The day when the two of them crossed paths, Lan Qingyan would slowly be defeated. Because Bailey Hongzhuang could take any blow, but Lan Qingyan couldn't. He hoped that Lan Yunxiao's family could take back their previous position because it originally belonged to Lan Yunxiao. Perhaps it was because Lan Yunxiao was a heaven-sent genius that he had to endure such suffering in his life. In the past, he had also endured such pain to reach where he was today. He asked himself, if he had stayed in a Lan family like that back then, he would probably be just an ordinary person now. He would be mediocre, doing the family business for the Lan family. Perhaps what he had endured in the past was unimaginable to ordinary people, but now that he thought about it, he felt that it was all worth it. Even if he had to do it all over again, he would still choose to do it. Nangong Wu saw Yu Linfeng's deep eyes and felt that Yu Linfeng was recalling something. Actually, she felt that Yu Linfeng and Lan Yunxiao were about the same age, so they might know each other. She understood Yu Linfeng very well. Because of their childhood experiences, it wasn't easy for Yu Linfeng to trust someone. However, ever since Bailey Hongzhuang appeared, Yu Linfeng had an extraordinary trust in Bailey Hongzhuang. He even let Bailey Hongzhuang use a secret like the stairway to heaven. Chapter 2067. Although Nangong Wu usually had a carefree attitude towards many things and wouldn't take it to heart at all, Nangong Wu didn't care at all. However, the person she cared about the most was Yu Linfeng. As long as it concerned Yu Linfeng, she would always be the most cautious. Yu Linfeng didn't want to talk about his childhood experiences. Thus, even though she was very curious, she never asked. Linfeng, we could be at ease now. After a few days, how about we go to Tiangang's sect to visit Hongzhuang and the others? Nangong Wu revealed a bright and excited smile. Although Bailey Hongzhuang had to take care of Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing and couldn't come to Limitless Palace, they could still go. Hearing that, Yu Linfeng's gaze landed on Nangong Wu. With a single glance, he could see Nangong Wu's impatient appearance. He couldn't help but laugh. After a few days, we'll go after Hong Zhuang's parents get better. Even if we go now, Hong Zhuang won't be in the mood to entertain us. If she entertains us and delays the treatment of Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing, we won't be willing to do that. With Lan Yunxiao's personality, he probably wouldn't be willing to see others with his current appearance. Nangong Wu, who was originally impatient, felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over her when she heard Yu Linfeng's words. However, after thinking carefully, it really was as Yu Linfeng said. Bailey Hong Zhuang must be very busy right now, so she didn't want to add to the trouble. Then I'll listen to you. Since Hong Zhuang and the others are fine, I can be at ease. You can continue your seclusion, and I'll continue researching my explosives. After speaking, Nangong Wu disappeared from Yu Linfeng's sight. Seeing this, Yu Linfeng helplessly shook his head. Nangong Wu originally had a special fondness for making explosives, but because she hadn't been able to achieve good results, she paid more attention to it. Now that the explosive's power had increased, Nangong Wu's enthusiasm had reached an unprecedented high. Now, if she wanted to find Nangong Wu, she had to go to the explosives workshop. Although his heart was filled with helplessness, Yu Linfeng's face couldn't help but reveal a smile. Bailey Hong Zhuang threw herself into making the antidote without rest or sleep. Even if her medical skills were very good, Yu Siqing's poison was her own creation, so Bailey Hong Zhuang would need a certain amount of time to crack it. Si Tian and Di Beichun were a bit worried when they saw Bailey Hong Zhuang so engrossed in her work. Bailey Hong Zhuang couldn't tire herself out after saving the two of them with great difficulty. Fortunately, when Di Beichun went to deliver food, Bailey Hong Zhuang would still stop to rest. On this day, Di Beichun slowly walked into Bailey Hong Zhuang's room with a midnight snack in his hand. Hearing the sound outside the door, Bailey Hong Zhuang turned her head and saw Di Beichun's extraordinarily handsome face. "Wife, you've been busy all day. Eat some supper and rest for a while before continuing." Di Beichun's voice was as gentle as water, and his beautiful face was overflowing with concern. Hong Zhuang had a different kind of charm when she was serious, but he couldn't help but worry. Bailey Hong Zhuang originally wanted to continue her research, but after seeing Di Beichun's concerned appearance, she nodded. "Okay, then let's eat together." Di Beichun smiled. "Okay." Chapter 2068. Di Beichun raised his brows, his deep eyes flickering as he asked in a low voice, "Is there a problem?" Di Beichun's heart sank. He knew how important Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were in Bailey Hong Zhuang's heart. Now that Hong Zhuang had finally reunited with her parents, he was the last person he wanted to see if anything happened to her. Bailey Hong Zhuang noticed Di Beichun's expression and reached out to hold Di Beichun's hand, a gentle and beautiful smile on her lips. "Beichun, this isn't bad news." Di Beichun finally relaxed after hearing Bailey Hong Zhuang's words. His face also returned to its usual handsome appearance. "Then what is it?" "I took a look at the various poisons that Yu Siqing had concocted. Logically speaking, a cultivator who consumed so many poisons would only die. It's impossible for them to persevere. However, my parents persevered for so long. It's truly miraculous. Moreover, many of these poisons are mutually restraining. I believe that Yu Siqing gave my parents some antidotes every time they were about to die so that they would suffer but not die." Bailey Hong Zhuang slowly analyzed the situation. She believed that her judgment wasn't wrong. Di Beichun's eyes darkened, his expression cold. Yu Siqing's actions were truly loathsome. However, I believe that my parents' bodies have been filled with poison for so many years. After I helped them detoxify the poison, the combination of the poisons they had consumed before had a very miraculous effect. I believe that my parents' physiques might change into one where they are immune to all poisons. Bailey Hong Zhuang's eyes brightened. She had heard of this when she was learning medicine from the elders in her family. There was a situation where some people were poisoned for many years. Because the poisons had the characteristics of mutually reinforcing and restraining one another, they would sometimes develop a physique that was immune to all poisons. However, this physique was very difficult to change. Most people died after being poisoned, so it was impossible for such a thing to happen. There were only a few times when it could happen by chance. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that her parents fit the description. As soon as these words came out, Bewitching was stunned for a moment. Being immune to poison was an extremely miraculous physique. Only some people who had gone through special encounters would have such a physique. Even in the history of the Shengxian continent, this was rarely seen. Will it really become like this? Bewitching couldn't help but ask. If Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's bodies could really undergo such a transformation, it would undoubtedly be for the best. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Although I'm not 100% sure, I'm 90% sure. When Bailey Hongzhuang first discovered this, she was a little excited. In the future, they would have to go back and face the Lan family once again. Yu Manlin's viciousness was not much different from Yu Siqing's. Perhaps Yu Manlan would use the same trick again. If her parents' physiques were immune to all poisons, then they wouldn't have to worry about these schemes and plots. That's great. Bewitching couldn't help but reveal a pleasantly surprised expression. In this world, there are always losses and gains. Presumably, Yu Siqing would never have thought that her years of poisoning would make Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing immune to all poisons. Chapter 2069. Wifey, how's the preparation of the antidote coming along? Bewitching looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's busy table. There were too many medicinal herbs and records on it. Bailey Hongzhuang had been busy for a few days. He hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang could have a good rest. After all, many things could not be rushed. I still need to prepare the antidote for 2 more poisons. Once the antidotes for these 2 poisons are prepared, then all of this can be resolved. Hearing this, Bewitching also breathed a sigh of relief. In that case, it won't be long before you can complete it. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I should be able to prepare the antidote by tonight. With that, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes focused on Bewitching's handsome face. Beichun, I'm lucky to have you by my side all this time. I know that you've been worried about me these days. But don't worry, I know my body well. I won't tire myself out. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were full of tenderness. All along, Bewitching had been her strongest support. If not for Bewitching by her side, it would have been more difficult for her to complete all of this. It was because of Bewitching that she was able to do all of this without any distractions. Bewitching's eyes gradually softened, and the corners of his mouth opened into a bright and intoxicating smile. The raised corners of his eyes were like cherry blossoms in March, intoxicating. Wifey, as long as you're happy, that's the happiest thing for me. No matter what you do, I'll support you. But when you're doing all of this, you have to take good care of yourself. Don't let me worry. Bewitching's words were as gentle as a clear spring. They went straight to Bailey Hongzhuang's heart, softening her to the extreme. She had put all her thoughts on her parents, but Bewitching had always been protecting her. She really felt that perhaps all the suffering she had endured before was for the sake of meeting Bewitching. Compared to getting to know Bewitching, what he had suffered before was nothing. Bailey Hongzhuang nestled in Bewitching's arms. Feeling the familiar warmth and faint fragrance, her heart was at peace. Before she was reunited with her parents, she didn't have so many emotions in her heart. However, after seeing her parents' deep affection for her, she finally understood how precious kinship was. Bewitching was an orphan. He didn't know where his parents were all these years. Come to think of it, Bewitching's emotions must have worsened after she reunited with her parents. Bewitching was so outstanding. She couldn't understand why his parents left him. If possible, she really hoped that she could accompany Bewitching to find his parents. She believed that there were no parents in the world who didn't love their children. Just like how she had lived so miserably before, but her parents had already given her the strongest love they could give her. It was just that she had never known it before. Bewitching's parents might have had no choice but to leave him. Now that Bewitching had grown up to be so outstanding, she believed that his parents would be proud to see him. Bailey Hongzhuang just thought all of this in her heart, but she didn't say it out. She didn't want to make Bewitching feel sad. Chapter 2070. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang had said, the next morning, Bailey Hongzhuang had finished concocting all the antidotes. Bailey Hongzhuang stretched lazily. She had been busy for so many days, but she didn't feel tired at all. On the contrary, there was a different kind of satisfaction in her heart. When Xiao He and Xiao Bai saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had finally left the room, their faces were filled with excited smiles. "Master, you're done." Xiao He went to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Because Bailey Hongzhuang had been concentrating on concocting the antidote, they didn't dare to disturb her too much. They were afraid that it would affect Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly with a radiant and satisfied smile. "That's right. Father and mother will be free from the pain of the poison today. These poisons existed in the human body and would always cause a dull pain." "That's great." Xiao Bai couldn't hide her excitement. After waiting for so many days, they finally received good news. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw that only Xiao He and Xiao Bai were by her side, her eyes filled with doubt. "Why isn't Bai sure with you today?" The three beasties were usually together, but now there were only the two of them. This was a little strange. Xiao He and Xiao Bai answered in unison when they heard Bailey Hongzhuang's question. "Bai Shi is taking care of Master's father and mother in the bedroom. We don't dare to come out together." During this period, the three of them had taken turns shuttling back and forth between Bailey Hongzhuang, Lan Yunxiao, and Mu Lingbing's rooms. If Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing needed help, they would be the first to help. This was the task their master had given them, so they would definitely complete it. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. It seemed that the three beasties were very reliable. "How are my father and mother now?" "Their complexions are much better than before. They only asked a few times what you were doing." Xiao He smiled. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved up. She took all the antidotes and walked towards Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's rooms. As long as the poison in her father and mother were cured, they only needed to recuperate and their bodies would be strong again. Every time she saw her father and mother's pale faces, she felt very uncomfortable. After Bailey Hongzhuang entered the room, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing revealed a joyful smile. "Yishuan, you're here." They hadn't seen her last time, but they didn't see her inzas, so they were missings. They wanted to see her as long as they could. They couldn't get enough of us. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded with a smile. "Father, mother, how do you feel now?" "We're already much better. Compared to before, we can't be any better," Mu Lingbing replied. Mu Lingbing's words were sincere, and she wasn't lying. Although there were still waves of pain coming from her body, compared to what she had endured before, this was simply a drizzle. She could even ignore it. Now, every minute and every second was an extravagant luxury compared to the past. "Yishuan, I didn't expect your medical skills to be so superb. We feel much better now." Chapter 2071. For the past few days, they had been unconscious for a period of time. When they woke up, they didn't see Bailey Hongzhuang. However, the three beasties had always been by their side and only told them that Bailey Hongzhuang was busy concocting the antidote. However, she had been concocting it day and night, so they were very worried. Bailey Hongzhuang saw the worry and concern on Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's faces, and her heart warmed. She only felt warmth in her heart. "Father, mother, don't worry. I won't tire myself out." As she spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang took out the antidote from her cosmos bag. "Father, mother, I've already concocted all the antidotes." Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's eyes were filled with astonishment when they heard this. Even if Mu Lingbing remembered all the ingredients, wasn't Bailey Hongzhuang a little too fast? There were many kinds of poisons. Even with Bailey Hongzhuang's superb medical skills, she still needed to study the antidote. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face brimming with confidence, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing both knew that Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't lying. It seemed that they had underestimated Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were probably even better than Yu Siqing's. They remembered how proud Yu Siqing had been when she had concocted these poisons. She had confidently declared that ordinary people wouldn't be able to detoxify the poisons she had concocted. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had managed to detoxify them all in a short time. If Yu Siqing knew about this, she would probably die from anger. In comparison, Bailey Hongzhuang had only left Yu Siqing one poison, but Yu Siqing had been puzzled for so long. It was obvious who was stronger and who was weaker. However, there are too many poisons in your bodies. If I detoxify them all at once, I'm afraid your bodies won't be able to take it. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. This was what she thought after understanding the characteristics of these poisons. Detoxification had certain requirements on the poisoned person's body. Although Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's bodies were much better after 2 days of recuperation, it was still impossible for them to expel so much poison in such a short time. Therefore, he could only detoxify a few poisons in a few days. At the same time, he also had to pay attention to replenishing his body. Fortunately, Situ Yin had already brought all kinds of tonics over. Even the meals prepared for Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were specially prepared. They were all very nutritious for their bodies. It was because of this that Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's complexions improved in such a short time. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's gazes landed on Bailey Hongzhuang. They weren't doctors and didn't know what to do. Now, I can only remove a few in a few days. I'll be able to remove all of them within a month, Bailey Hongzhuang said with a smile. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing revealed relieved smiles. They were also clear that they couldn't recover overnight. They needed time to recover bit by bit. Let me take a look at your condition first. Bailey Hongzhuang walked to the side of the two people and sat down. She checked the condition of the two people's bodies through their pulse. With this check, Bailey Hongzhuang found that the bodies of the two were much better than before, which was really good news. Chapter 2072. Time passed in the blink of an eye. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang returned to Tiangang sect, she had been staying in the sect master's palace and rarely left. Except for the day when they went to the alchemy hall, where some disciples saw Bailey Hongzhuang, none of the other disciples saw her. It was as if she had never returned. Xia Jiqing and the others were full of doubts when they saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had returned to Tiangang sect, but hadn't appeared. However, they didn't know where Bailey Hongzhuang was. Although they were full of worry and curiosity, they could only wait. They believed that as long as Bailey Hongzhuang was busy, she would definitely contact them. They had known Bailey Hongzhuang for so long and knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was a person who valued friendship and righteousness. She would never abandon her group of friends. Sect Master's Palace. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's bodies were getting better little by little. Every few days, the concentrated poison in their bodies would be removed. With the gradual reduction of the poison in their bodies, their physical condition was also constantly improving. Compared to before, when they were so weak that they couldn't even stand up, they were now able to move around in the room. However, because they hadn't recovered yet, they didn't go outside to enjoy the breeze. Everyone's hearts were filled with joy at such a change. This was what they wanted to see the most. Yishuan, can you tell us about your experiences over the years now? Mu Lingbing's condition today was exceptionally good. As long as this continued, it wouldn't take long for her to completely recover. In the past, she would sometimes fall into a deep sleep, so she never had the chance to understand what Bailey Hongzhuang had experienced over the years. Today, she finally had the chance to understand. Yishuan, tell us about it. We want to know how you've been all these years, Lan Yunxiao said. This was what they had always wanted to know. Although they couldn't participate in Bailey Hongzhuang's growth, they at least wanted to know. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. She knew that if she didn't say anything, her parents would be anxious. At that time, father and mother left me at the entrance of the general's mansion in Fengbo country. Coincidentally, the general's wife gave birth to a stillborn child that day. Who knew that she would give birth to a stillborn child? Coincidentally, they found me and treated me as their own child. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao looked at each other, rejoicing in their eyes. They didn't think that things would be so coincidental. They just saw that the general's residence was very good and hoped that they could adopt Bailey Hongzhuang. Noticing Mu Ling Bing's expression, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood their thoughts. However, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't have a good life in the past because the general's wife didn't have much status. In the end, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't tell her about the hardships she had suffered in the past. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had already suffered enough. If they knew what had happened, it would only increase their guilt and sadness. This was something she didn't want to see. Later on, by chance, I married Di Beichen. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. If she hadn't interacted with Di Beichen back then, her life would have been different. Yishuan, you're already married? Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were shocked. They hadn't expected this. Chapter 2073. Then why haven't we met before? Mu Lingbing's heart clenched. Their daughter's marriage was such an important matter, yet they still didn't know about it. Wasn't that too negligent? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. He's the one who went with me to save you two that day. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's faces revealed a look of understanding. Just as they had guessed, if the other party wasn't close enough to Bailey Hongzhuang, then he definitely wouldn't have accompanied Bailey Hongzhuang on such a dangerous mission. Di Beichen's appearance was unforgettable. Although Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's attention had been on Bailey Hongzhuang, they still remembered Di Beichen's appearance very clearly. Mu Lingbing, who was originally very nervous, calmed down a little when she found out that Di Beichen was Bailey Hongzhuang's husband. At least, when she first met Di Beichen, she felt that he was a trustworthy person. Moreover, he looked very outstanding. His appearance was extremely outstanding. What's his name? Why haven't we met after that? Lan Yunxiao usually didn't speak much, but when it came to his daughter's lifelong happiness, he couldn't help but ask questions. Back then, he had already felt that the other party was likely to be Bailey Hongzhuang's sweetheart, but he didn't expect their relationship to have progressed to this stage. Since he was already his son-in-law, he naturally had to take a good look at him. His name is Di Beichen. Actually, he's always been here. He's the one who ordered people to prepare your meals every day. It's just that he didn't want to disturb your rest, so he didn't see you too. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Hearing Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao's questions and worry that Di Beichen wouldn't treat her well, she felt that it was very interesting. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's explanation, Lan Yunxiao and the other two finally understood. Speaking of which, because they had to detoxify the poison, they were often in a state of unconsciousness. Even if Di Beichen came, they wouldn't have the energy to talk to him. It was only today that the two of them felt much better. Since he's here, let him in. As your parents, we'll help you take a good look. Mu Lingbing held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. As her daughter's mother-in-law, she had to be on her daughter's behalf. Although they were already married, that was because they weren't around in the past. Now that they were here, if Di Beichen dared to do anything bad to Bailey Hongzhuang, they would definitely not let Di Beichen off. Hearing this, the smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's lips deepened. She immediately smiled and said, "All right, I'll go get him." Bailey Hongzhuang had always had confidence in Di Beichen. With Di Beichen's excellence and his affection for her, no one could find fault with him. She believed that her parents would think the same. These days, Di Beichen wanted to find a chance to properly meet with Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing and reveal his identity. However, because Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing weren't in good spirits, they hadn't come yet. It was rare for Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing to be in such good condition today, so he wanted to properly meet them. Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the room. Di Beichen was in the mountain behind the sleeping quarters. That was where Di Beichen had been cultivating recently. Chapter 2074. After Bailey Hongzhuang left, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing looked at each other with complicated expressions. Yishuan is already married, and we didn't even make it on such an important day. Mu Lingbing's expression was desolate. Marriage was the most important thing in a woman's life. When she found out that she had given birth to a daughter, Mu Lingbing wanted to find a son-in-law in the future. As a mother, she wanted to personally dress her daughter, watch her get married, have children, and live a happy life. However, not only did she not see Yishuan grow up, She even missed the most important moment. Lan Yunxiao patted Mu Lingbing's shoulder. He understood that she must be very disappointed. In reality, even he felt an indescribable desolation in his heart. No matter what, the fact that we can still see Yixuan is already a blessing from the heavens. Even now, he couldn't help but rejoice. If it weren't for the obsession in their hearts that made them give up the hope of living, they wouldn't have reunited today. Mu Lingbing nodded. That's right. This is already the best situation. I really shouldn't ask for too much. As Yixuan's parents, they hadn't done anything for her since she was young. On the contrary, it was Yixuan who went through untold hardships to save them. Now, she was researching the antidote for them day and night. She was truly ashamed. However, as a mother, she really couldn't give Yixuan anything. I saw the Bewitching that day. He's a handsome young man and looks pretty good. A smile slowly spread across Lan Yunxiao's lips. When he saw Bewitching, he noticed that Bewitching's appearance was outstanding. His eyes were clear and not at all exaggerated. Instead, they emitted a sense of tenacity and steadiness. Just from his gaze and temperament, he could determine that Bewitching was a pretty good young man. Hearing this, Bewitching's appearance appeared in Mu Lingbing's mind. He's not bad-looking, but our Yixuan is also a rare beauty. If I had to say, it might not be a good thing for a man to be too handsome. If he was disloyal, Yixin probably wouldn't be happy either. Aren't you men all the same? Eating from a bowl and looking at the pot. Bing, or what you're saying is wrong. I've always treated you wholeheartedly. Seeing that Mu Lingbing was talking about him, Lan Yunxiao hastily expressed his stance to prove his innocence. Even though many men in this world had multiple wives and concubines, to him, Mu Lingbing alone was enough. Mu Lingbing raised her brows and glanced at Lan Yunxiao. That's not necessarily true. Didn't your cousin secretly throw flirtatious glances at you? Lan Yunxiao straightened his face. Bing, she's just my little sister. Mu Lingbing pursed her lips. Back then, when Lan Yunxiao had married her, many women had been dissatisfied. Now that he thought about it, everything was still vivid in his mind. Fortunately, she was also not easy to bully, so she suppressed all of this. In her view, Yixin's personality was so good. If she could not suppress it, wouldn't that be troublesome? When Bailey Hongzhuang arrived at the back of the mountain, Bewitching was practicing his sword. Under the setting sun, his light golden robes fluttered in the wind. The youth wielded his sword like a cool breeze. Chapter 2075. When Bewitching saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had arrived, he sheathed his sword and a bewitching smile blossomed on his handsome face. Hongzhuang, how come you have the time to come find me? Bewitching was a little surprised to see Bailey Hongzhuang, but he was even more happy. Recently, Hongzhuang had been busy curing Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's poison. He was the only one who went to find Hongzhuang when she was free. However, in Bewitching's eyes, all of this was extremely good. Back then, Hongzhuang had been in Fengbo Country or Azure Water Academy. It wasn't easy for him to find Hongzhuang if he wanted to. But now, Hongzhuang was in the same place as him. As long as they met, they would be able to see each other immediately. This was what Bewitching hoped for the most. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes at Bewitching's words. Bewitching, are you complaining that I haven't come to find you these days? Bewitching reached out and hugged Bailey Hongzhuang. He leaned over slightly and whispered into Bailey Hongzhuang's ear. Wife, even if you don't have time to find me, it's the same if I have time to find you. No matter how jealous I am, I won't be jealous of my in-laws. His warm breath blew into Bailey Hongzhuang's ear, making her feel numb and soft. Bewitching's teasing and playful words were full of ambiguity. Bailey Hongzhuang's earlobes instantly turned red and her body went limp. Fortunately, Bewitching had been hugging her the entire time, so she didn't lose her composure. Bailey Hongzhuang reached out and pounded Bewitching's chest. You're really a bad guy. You only know how to bully me every time. Bewitching smiled. Wife, your husband can't wait to dote on you. How could I bully you? Let's not talk about this anymore. Someone is going to teach you a lesson now for bullying me. Bailey Hongzhuang crossed her arms in front of her chest with a somewhat complacent expression. Di Beichen frowned and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in confusion. He didn't understand what Bailey Hongzhuang meant. "Wife, what do you mean? My parents want to see you." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled proudly. Now that her father and mother had been back for so long, it was time for Di Beichen to meet them. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Di Beichen's eyes widened. "Really? My father-in-law and mother-in-law want to see me?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "That's right. My parents want to see you and help me check you out. If I don't pass, are you going to abandon me?" Di Beichen raised his brows and teased. Bailey Hongzhuang pretended to think seriously for a moment before nodding her head. "Maybe it's very possible. My wife, you're thinking too much. Your husband will definitely not give you this chance." Di Beichen took Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. "It's our first official meeting. We have to leave a good impression on them. We can't let them wait too long. Let's go quickly." When Bailey Hongzhuang saw Di Beichen so anxious to see Lan Yunxiao, the smile on her lips couldn't help but widen. Usually, it was rare to see Di Beichen so anxious. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were about to reach the couple's room, Di Beichen suddenly stopped. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen in astonishment. She didn't know what Di Beichen wanted to do. Chapter 2076. Although Di Beichen was confident in himself, the other party was Hongzhuang's parents. He didn't want them to have a bad impression of him. Seeing Di Beichen so serious, Bailey Hongzhuang was moved. In truth, based on Di Beichen's feelings for her, her parents wouldn't disagree. "Knock, knock." Bailey Hongzhuang knocked on the door. Hearing the commotion outside, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing straightened their expressions and said, "Come in." Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen walked into the room together. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing could clearly see Di Beichen's appearance. He was dressed in a light golden brocade robe. His figure was tall and handsome, slender and noble. His features were elegant and handsome, and his smile was gentle. His eyes were clear and warm, without the slightest trace of coldness. He was just like a graceful and elegant young master. Seeing Di Beichen like this, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's eyes were filled with satisfaction. This Di Beichen was a perfect match for their daughter. "Greetings to uncle and aunt." Di Beichen bowed courteously. However, when Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing heard how Di Beichen addressed them, their brows furrowed. Since Di Beichen was already married to Bailey Hongzhuang, then there was something wrong with how he addressed them. "I heard that you and Hongzhuang are already married?" Mu Lingbing slowly asked. Di Beichen immediately understood why Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's expressions were so strange after he greeted them. "Uncle Annie Hongzhuang and I got married in Fengbo country, but at that time, Hongzhuang and I got married because of a marriage contract from the Emperor of Fengbo country. At that time, I married Hongzhuang as the Emperor of Fengbo. After I got together with Hongzhuang, I decided to wait for the two of you to come before marrying Hongzhuang in a grand manner with my current identity." Di Beichen's eyes were clear and his voice sincere. This had always been his idea. He wanted to marry Bailey Hongzhuang in a grand manner with the blessings of his parents. He didn't want Hongzhuang to have any regrets, because Hongzhuang was the love of his life. Everything he did was for Hongzhuang to live a better life. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were also slightly moved, their hearts filled with excitement. They had already heard from Bailey Hongzhuang that Di Beichen had become the Emperor of Fengbo because he had been persecuted. In that case, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's identities in Fengbo weren't their true identities. Mu Lingbing's heart skipped a beat. If she could personally send her daughter off, that would be her wish. But before that, I hope to obtain uncle's and aunt's approval so that you can be at ease in marrying Hongzhuang to me. Di Beichen's smile was sincere and handsome. It was full of sincerity without the slightest hint of hypocrisy or perfunctoriness. Bailey Hongzhuang was a rare treasure in his heart. He also knew what it meant to obtain Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's approval for Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing Di Beichen's earnest and sincere appearance, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao looked at each other. Originally, They wanted to inquire about Bewitching's background and find out if he had any bad history. However, after seeing Bewitching's sincere appearance, the original questions could no longer continue to be asked. Chapter 2077. After all these years of experience, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had a certain degree of accuracy in judging people. Just from Bewitching's performance, they could already see Bewitching's sincerity towards Yishuan. In truth, they weren't dissatisfied with Bewitching before, because Bewitching was willing to risk his life to save them with Yishuan. Just this point alone was enough to prove his sincerity. Father, mother, it was only after Beichun discovered my jade pendant that I learned of my true identity. If not for that, I'm afraid I still wouldn't know. Moreover, it was he who took care of me all these years and helped me inquire about you. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was gentle. She had seen all that Bewitching had done for her. How could Bewitching let her down? Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing smiled when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang speaking up for Bewitching. It looked like their daughter had steeled her heart to be with Bewitching. Yishuan is my precious daughter. If you dare bully her, I definitely won't forgive you. Mu Lingbing continued. In the past, she and Lan Yunxiao weren't here, so she didn't know if Yishuan had suffered any grievances. But now that they were here, they definitely wouldn't let Yishuan suffer any more grievances. And don't worry, as long as I'm here, I won't let Hongzhuang suffer. Bewitching's voice was serious, each word like an oath. To him, if anyone dared to bully Hongzhuang, he wouldn't rest until the other party was dead. Hearing Bewitching's reply, Mu Lingbing nodded and relaxed. Then, she suddenly recalled Bewitching's words and couldn't help asking. Beichun, you said you used to be the Prince of Fengbo. Then what is your current identity? Speaking of which, ever since they were rescued by Hongzhuang, they had been staying in the room and didn't know where they were. Because they had never left the room and only saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the 3 contracted beasts, they didn't ask too much. However, after hearing Bewitching's words, she felt that Bewitching's true identity wasn't simple. According to Yishuan, Bewitching had only become the Prince of Fengbo after being persecuted. After being persecuted, he became a prince. This was enough to prove that Bewitching's previous status was very high. One had to know that in the mortal world, a prince of small dynasty was an identity that many people envied. Of course, such a status wasn't much to them. As Mu Lingbing's voice fell, Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at each other, their expressions somewhat complicated. Even now, they still hadn't introduced Situ Yin to Mu Lingbing. To tell the truth, they were conflicted and didn't know when to do so. Now that Mu Lingbing asked this question, it wouldn't be appropriate if they didn't know how to fight. After thinking for a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded at Bewitching. Over the past few days, she had been looking for an opportunity to sound Mu Lingbing out. However, she hadn't found a suitable opportunity. Chapter 2078. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing also noticed Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang's small movements and couldn't help feeling curious. Could it be that Bewitching's identity was very mysterious? Otherwise, why would they hesitate when talking about this matter? In an instant, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's hearts sank. If Bewitching's identity was someone hiding in the shadows, it wouldn't be good for Yixian. However, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao were stunned when they heard Bewitching's next words. I am a young sect master of Tiangang's sect, Bewitching slowly said. When Bewitching said this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching couldn't help but observe Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao's expressions. They didn't know if Mu Lingbing knew of her relationship with Sita Yin. If she did, Mu Lingbing would be shocked to hear the news. Even if she didn't know, they would tell Mu Lingbing the news today. Tiangang's sect was a renowned sect in the Shengxian continent. Countless cultivators racked their brains to enter it. As the young sect master of Tiangang's sect, Bewitching's identity was naturally incomparably honorable. If it was before, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao wouldn't have found it strange when they heard the name Tiangang's sect. On the contrary, With Di Beichen's honorable status and his wholehearted devotion to Yi Xian, they were most at ease. Tiangang's sect was famous for being upright. Once Lan Yixuan became the wife of the young sect master of Tiangang's sect, her identity would also be incomparably honorable. However, they had learned of a relationship between Mu Lingbing and the sect master of Tiangang's sect from Yusiqing. Thinking back, they had been extremely shocked when they first heard the news. They had even thought that everything Yusiqing had said was false, and that she was probably just toying with them. However, thinking about it carefully, there was no need for Yusiqing to tease them. Back then, Yusiqing had already told them that the reason they were being targeted and tortured was because of Mu Lingbing's parents. However, Yusiqing had never revealed the identity of her parents to Mu Lingbing. It was only when C2 Yan had gone to the Yu clan that Yusiqing had angrily spilled the beans. Mu Lingbing had also remembered C2 Yan's name. Ever since she was young, she had always thought that she was an orphan. Only her master took pity on her and raised her into an adult. Ever since she married Lan Yinxiao, she didn't even have the chance to return to the Sun Moon Palace before falling into such a state. Lan Yinxiao and Mu Lingbing never imagined that things would be so coincidental. Back then, they had left Yixuan and Fengbo, but now Yixuan was together with the young sect master of Heavenly Dipper sect. Perhaps all of this was predestined. They were destined to meet Situ Yan. Mu Lingbing had hated her own father when she was a child. She couldn't understand why her parents had abandoned her. Right now, her feelings were extremely complicated. The changes in Lan Yinxiao and Mu Lingbing's expressions didn't escape Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's eyes. They immediately discovered the crux of the problem. From the looks of it, Mu Lingbing and the others knew about Situ Yan. Bailey Hongzhuang was inwardly astonished. Grandfather didn't acknowledge Mu Lingbing because he didn't know. If Mu Lingbing already knew, then why didn't she acknowledge grandfather? Chapter 2079. Father, Mother, you've heard of Tiangang's sect, right? Bailey Hongzhuang asked with a smile. Lan Yinxiao nodded. Tiangang's sect is a transcendent sect. Of course we know. Actually, we're in Tiangang's sect right now. Bailey Hongzhuang continued to speak. Since she had already spoken up to this point, it would be better for her to explain everything clearly. Mu Lingbing was someone who had weathered many storms. Even if this news had a certain impact on her, she believed that Mu Lingbing would be able to bear it. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Lan Yinxiao and Mu Lingbing both froze for a moment. They obviously didn't expect such a result. They had always lived in the house and had never stepped out. They had never imagined that they would be in Tiangang's sect. Mother, to tell you the truth, I've already acknowledged grandfather. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were like a heavy bomb that exploded in Mu Lingbing and Lan Yinxiao's hearts. When they first learned about this from Yusiqing, they felt extremely conflicted. They hadn't expected that. Lan Yixuan would be the first to acknowledge Situ Yan. Father, Mother, did you already know about grandfather's identity? Actually, grandfather went with you when we went to save you. But he was worried that Mother wouldn't want to see him, so he never appeared in front of you. Grandfather was deceived by Yusiqing back then. He's actually been searching for grandmother all these years. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was low. She could understand Mu Lingbing's feelings when she heard this. Just like when she first found out about her own identity, her feelings were extremely complicated. But in the end, she chose to accept it. Moreover, grandfather didn't want what happened to him back then. All these years, he was relying on his own stubbornness to search for grandmother. This was already a huge punishment. As long as all these misunderstandings were cleared up, this wouldn't happen again. But grandmother didn't give grandfather a chance. He also went to Yutian City. Mu Lingbing's eyes widened in disbelief. She had clearly heard Yusiqing say that she had deceived Situ Yan, and that Situ Yan didn't know that she was her daughter. She had never thought that Situ Yan would be involved in the rescue this time. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Grandfather went with us. That's why we're so confident that we can save all of you. After receiving Bailey Hongzhuang's confirmation, Mu Lingbing's expression changed slightly as a warm feeling rose in her heart. Originally, She thought that she was a child without a father or mother. She didn't expect that everything was not like that at all. Her father had always been looking for her, and her mother had always kept her by her side. It was just that she had never known about it. Mother, did you know grandfather's identity long ago, but never acknowledged him? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask. Lan Yinxiao saw that Mu Lingbing was still immersed in her emotions, so he took the initiative to tell Bailey Hongzhuang. Your mother didn't know before, but Yu Siqing told us everything a few days ago. It was said that at that time, sect leader Sidu went to the Yu clan to ask about your mother's identity. This matter seemed to have given Yu Siqing a huge shock, so Yu Siqing went to look for us and told us a lot. It was only then that your mother and I found out. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichan exchanged glances and immediately understood. Chapter 2080. It looked like Yu Siqing was still brooding over what had happened in the past. That was why she had been so agitated when Situ Yin had gone to find her. Father, did Yu Siqing say that grandfather and grandmother were separated because of a misunderstanding caused by her? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. It would take some time for Mu Lingbing to accept her past, but if she knew that it was all a misunderstanding, it would be much easier for her to accept it. Lan Yinxiao nodded. Yu Siqing clearly thought that we would never be able to leave in this lifetime, so she didn't hide anything when she talked about it. As soon as this was said, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichan both breathed a sigh of relief. Yu Siqing was truly abominable, but they hadn't expected her to help them. With Yu Siqing's testimony, everything that Situ Yin had said was true without a doubt. That's good. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Actually, grandfather hasn't given up on searching all these years, but he hasn't been able to find grandmother. I was only able to reunite with grandfather by chance, and it's all thanks to mother's name. My name? Mu Lingbing's gaze focused on Bailey Hongzhuang's body, her eyes filled with doubt and confusion. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. When grandfather and grandmother were together, they had already thought of your name. When grandfather heard your name, he immediately connected the dots. Adding on my identity, it all came together. Although Bailey Hongzhuang's words were simple, Lan Yinxiao and Mu Lingbing were both smart people. So after thinking about it carefully, they understood everything. So that's how it is. Mu Lingbing slowly clenched her fists under her sleeves as she did her best to control her emotions. She had never thought that her name was the result of her parents' agreement. However, she had always thought that she had been abandoned by her parents. At this moment, all of her previous hatred and pain had vanished into thin air. Whether it was Situ Yin or Mu Jin's situation, she could understand. Based on their standpoint, that was probably the best outcome. This was all because of Yu Siqing. If it wasn't for Yu Siqing, how could their family have endured so much pain? Bailey Hongzhuang held Mu Lingbing's hand and said, Mother, grandfather has been in great pain all these years. When he first found out that you had woken up, he was also very excited. I could tell that Grandpa really wanted to reunite with you, but he was worried that you wouldn't accept him. Actually, we all know that Grandpa didn't do anything wrong back then. He was just deceived. Mother, if you can understand, why don't you acknowledge Grandfather? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mu Lingbing. If Mu Lingbing could reunite with Situ Yin, then their family would be reunited. All that was left was her grandmother, and then their family would be completely reunited. Mu Lingbing looked into Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, her right hand slowly resting on Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. Yishuan, Mother hasn't done anything for you since you were young, and even made you suffer so much pain. However, you've never blamed me, so what right do I have to blame him? Mu Lingbing's smile faded. The person she owed the most in this life was Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 2081. This was what Mu Lingbing was most grateful for. In the past, when she saw Lan Qingyin's attitude towards Yu Manlan, she had thought about it. If she really had the chance to see her daughter in the future, if Yi Xin criticized her like Lan Qingyin, would she be able to bear it? Without a doubt, she wouldn't be able to bear it. However, ever since she met Lan Yishuan, Yi Xin had never complained in the slightest. On the contrary, Ixin was so concerned about them that she could feel Ixin's deep feelings for them. To her, this was the greatest gift from the heavens. She had lived with a guilty heart for so many years, but her daughter was a true angel. If she and Lan Yunxiao were parents, Ixin could accept it. But what reason did she have to not accept a father like Situ Yan? When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun heard Mu Ling Bing's words, they couldn't help but sigh in relief. It seemed like their previous worries were unnecessary. Mu Ling Bing was a reasonable person and had already seen through all of this. Mother, you're the best. Grandfather will definitely be very happy. Bailey Hongzhuang hugged Mu Ling Bing tightly, her face full of joy. Since Mu Ling Bing had accepted it, their family was getting closer and closer to reuniting. Mu Ling Bing hugged Bailey Hongzhuang back, her smile full of happiness. Now, she really felt that all the bitterness was over and the sweetness was about to begin. Ever since they left the Yu family, everything had changed for the better. Ixin, I think it's better to wait until my poison is completely removed before meeting him. In my current state, it's still not suitable. Mu Ling Bing thought for a moment before speaking in a low voice. Although she was much better than before, she still looked sickly. She had lived for so long, but she had never seen her father before. Now that she finally had the chance to see him, she naturally wanted to present her best side. Hearing Mu Ling Bing's words, Bailey Hongzhuang understood Mu Ling Bing's thoughts and nodded with a smile. All right. Lan Yunxiao dotingly looked at Mu Ling Bing. As Mu Ling Bing's closest person, he naturally knew what she was thinking. In the past, Mu Ling Bing had been brooding over her birth. Now that everything had been resolved, he was truly happy for Mu Ling Bing. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three talked about a lot of things that had happened in the past few years, and how Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had met. Mu Ling Bing was obviously very interested in Bailey Hongzhuang and wanted to know everything about Bailey Hongzhuang. Regarding this, Bailey Hongzhuang did not hide anything and spoke of her experiences over the years. When Lan Yunxiao and Mu Ling Bing found out how Bailey Hongzhuang had grown from the young miss of Feng Bo's general's estate to her current status, their hearts were filled with shock. Originally, they thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's path had been very smooth. They never expected it to be a path filled with thorns. Situ Yan's reunion with Bailey Hongzhuang had only happened after she had worked hard to reach her current status. After learning about her experiences, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's admiration for Bailey Hongzhuang went beyond admiration. After all the hardships that Bailey Hongzhuang had experienced over the years, her inner strength had shaken them to their core. However, they felt even more pride. Chapter 2082. As Mu Ling Bing and Lan Yunxiao's health improved bit by bit, Bailey Hongzhuang's mood completely turned for the better. She felt as if the burden on her shoulders had been lightened by a lot. Although she hadn't gotten her revenge, at least her parents' lives were no longer in danger. Their family was reunited. This was the most joyous thing. After knowing Mu Ling Bing's attitude, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun told Citian about this matter. Citian was extremely happy when he learned that Mu Ling Bing was willing to forgive him. At least, the problem he had been worried about didn't happen. After knowing the truth, Citian felt extremely guilty, afraid that Mu Ling Bing wouldn't forgive him. Fortunately, neither Mu Ling Bing nor Bailey Hongzhuang cared too much about this matter. At the same time, the news of the alchemist test gradually spread throughout Tiangang's sect. The triennial alchemist test attracted the attention of Tiangang's sect's disciples, especially those from the alchemy hall. They were curious as to what kind of junior brothers and sisters would come this time. Of course, most people were interested in the existence of their junior sisters. Chapter 2083. This time, the medicine sect has come up with a very good reason so that we can't find a reason to reject them at the moment. Back then, when the medicine sect master had been chatting with Master, he had mentioned that if there was an opportunity, the two sects would exchange pointers to promote the efforts of both sects' pill refiners. Master had thought that the sect master had casually mentioned it, so he had agreed without much thought. Now, it seems that the medicine sect master has clearly calculated everything, so we can only accept it now. After all, based on master status, he can't possibly go back on his word. Bewitching's eyes were filled with exasperation. He never thought that the medicine sect would come up with such a plan. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes filled with understanding. This matter could be considered as a joke, but it could also be considered as a promise. This was not Si Tuyin's fault. When the other party had made such a joke, anyone would have agreed half-heartedly. However, they would have treated it as a joke and would not have taken it to heart. Who would have thought that the medicine sect would seize this opportunity? If the Tiangang sect had rejected them, they would have lacked the grace of a great sect. However, if they had accepted it just like that, they would feel as if they had swallowed a fly. It seems that the other party had set up a trap. They had thought of this plan long ago. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly spoke. Many of the leaders of the forces were cunning old foxes. When dealing with such people, one really couldn't relax at all. Otherwise, he might be swallowed by it if he wasn't careful. Deep Beichun gently nodded. Now that I think about it, that is indeed the case. However, we have no other choice now. The Tiangang sect may have the Pill Refinement Hall, but there aren't that many disciples in the Pill Refinement Hall. Even if the medicine sect were to recruit all the pill refiners in the sect, it shouldn't be enough for their needs, right? Bailey Hongzhuang gently furrowed her brows as a sense of confusion filled her eyes. The Pill Refinement Hall held a very important position in the Tiangang sect. Most of the pills that the sect's disciples require for their cultivation were provided by the Pill Refinement Hall. If the medicine sect were to recruit the disciples, the impact would be very great. The Tiangang sect is the leader among the sects, and our pill refinement skills are very outstanding. The medicine sect wants to make a move on us because we have enough influence. Once our sect's alchemists are lured away by them, then other sects' alchemists will naturally have other ideas. Besides, this way, many pill refiners would rush towards the medicine sect's reputation. Deep Beichun analyzed the situation to Bailey Hongzhuang. He never thought that the medicine sect would be so scheming. However, the current situation could only continue like this. Then what's the specific arrangement? Bailey Hongzhuang asked curiously. The medicine sect will send some outstanding pill refiners to compete with the pill refiners in the sect. If we win, the medicine sect will give us many pills that we need. If we lose, then we won't be able to stop the alchemists from leaving with them, Deep Beichun said slowly. Thus, we can only win this competition. If we lose, although the losses won't be too great, we will lose the face of our sect. I understand. Bailey Hongzhuang understands the situation very well. The medicine sect may have used a name to send them over, but their actions were no different from a provocation. If the Tiangang sect were to lose, they would lose all face. Chapter 2084. From D. Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood the true situation of the alchemist competition. The medicine sect focused on medicine and was equally famous in the Shengxian continent. Everyone knew that the medicine sect had the most number of alchemists. The reason why the medicine sect wanted to recruit alchemists from other places was to win over all the outstanding alchemists in the Shengxian continent to the medicine sect. As a result, the various sects would have a shortage of medicinal pills. When that happens, the medicine sect status would naturally rise with the tide. Even though the medicine sect's current status was not bad, it was still a distance away from their requirements. This was why they had chosen to start with the Tiangang sect. The medicine sect had many alchemists, and they usually focused on refining medicine. Naturally, there was no need to elaborate on their medicine refining skills. In comparison, even though the Tiangang sect's alchemists had pretty good medicine refining skills, they did not have enough confidence to compete with the medicine sect. Because they could not afford to lose, they must win. However, it was not an easy task to achieve victory. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered over this matter as she slowly walked towards the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. She never thought that such a problem would suddenly arise at a time like this. It was really troublesome. On the other hand, Yu Siqing had successfully cured the Yu family's cultivators of the poison. However, she had spent quite a lot of time on this. Under the influence of this infectious poison, the Yu family's power had been greatly reduced. Many of their core forces and younger generation members had fallen. It could be said that after such a setback, the Yu family's power was no longer what it used to be. Without 20 years' time, they would not be able to recover. However, as a family of cultivators, the Yu family had experienced many storms and waves over the years. Even though this incident had dealt a blow to the Yu family, it would not damage their foundation. At a time like this, the role of an ally would naturally be revealed. After the Yu family had settled everything in the family, they sent people to the Lan family. The Lan family and the Yu family were in-laws and had always looked out for each other. Now that such a thing had happened to their family, they naturally needed to communicate with the Lan family. If someone were to take advantage of this time to harm the Yu clan, then they would need the Lan clan's help. After Bailey Hongzhuang heard this from Di Beichun, she felt that it was very funny. The relationship between the Lan clan and the Yu clan was really close. However, she would destroy this so-called alliance one by one. Bailey Hongzhuang went directly to the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall to meditate. At this time, Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu were mostly meditating and cultivating. When Bailey Hongzhuang came to the field, she saw that Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu were still sitting in their old seats. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but smile as she slowly walked towards Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu. When some of the cultivators who were meditating saw Bailey Hongzhuang, their eyes were filled with astonishment. Bailey Hongzhuang hasn't come to the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall for a while. I didn't expect her to come today. Bailey Hongzhuang is really extraordinary after having this relationship with a young sect master. We ordinary disciples can only stay in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall most of the time and can't leave the Tiangang sect. However, this Bailey Hongzhuang is not restricted at all. Chapter 2085. Bailey Hongzhuang, as a disciple of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, was usually the focus of the disciples. Bailey Hongzhuang only cultivated in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall for a period of time, and then disappeared for 3 months. Bailey Hongzhuang's figure had never appeared in the cultivation field or the residence. Obviously, Bailey Hongzhuang was probably not in Tiangang sect at all. Because they had not seen Bailey Hongzhuang for a period of time, they also had not seen Di Beichun. Di Beichun, as the young master of Tiangang sect, was rarely seen. However, even if the number of times they saw him was small, they could still see him. In everyone's opinion, it was likely that the young sect master had taken Bailey Hongzhuang to other places to cultivate. The young sect master was so young, and his cultivation was so outstanding. Everyone could be sure that the young sect master must have his own way of cultivation. Otherwise, how could he improve his cultivation so quickly? For a long time, everyone had been very envious of the young sect master, who let them not have the noble identity of a young sect master, so they could only be envious. However, now Bailey Hongzhuang was able to cultivate with the young sect master, which made them too unconvinced. It was precisely because of this that when everyone saw Bailey Hongzhuang, they could not help but be envious. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally heard the words of the people talking, but she had already heard this kind of content when she first came to Tiangang sect, so at this moment, she did not feel that there was anything strange about it. People always liked to find excuses for their failures. Only in this way, they felt that failure was easier to accept. In this case, why should she expose all this? Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu were cultivating when they suddenly found that everyone was talking about Bailey Hongzhuang, and their eyes could not help but be filled with doubts. When they turned their heads, Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had already sat behind them. Hongzhuang, what brings you here today? Xia Jiqing's face was filled with an excited smile. Since the last time she saw Bailey Hongzhuang outside the resource hall, she hadn't seen Bailey Hongzhuang for a long time. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. I was busy before and didn't have time to come over. I'm free now. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu had some doubts in their hearts, that they didn't understand what Bailey Hongzhuang was busy with. However, Since Bailey Hongzhuang didn't take the initiative to talk about it, it must be because it wasn't suitable to talk about it. Therefore, they did not ask. It's good that you're not busy now. Xia Jiqing smiled brightly. Then will you be coming to the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall to cultivate? Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and said, more or less. Right, we haven't gotten together for a long time. It's better to find everyone and get together. Bailey Hongzhuang said. Okay. Xia Jiqing's eyes lit up. Everyone has wanted to get together for a long time, but you haven't had time. Now that you're here, let's go find Gong Shaoqing and the others. Thinking of the time when they were in the assessment competition, they got along with each other every day. Since they came to Tiangang sect, they didn't have the opportunity to get along with each other every day like before. However, they still worked hard to maintain this relationship. At least, their friendship would never change. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. Okay, then let's go. Chapter 2086. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the others walk out of the arena like this, the cultivators present were also puzzled. Speaking of which, Bailey Hongzhuang had the best relationship with Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, and everyone was very envious. After all, once Bailey Hongzhuang became the mistress of Tiangang sect in the future, then the status of Xia Jiqing and the others, who were good friends of Bailey Hongzhuang, would naturally rise. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others left the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall and went to the Azure Dragon Palace Hall and the White Tiger Palace Hall. Not long after, everyone had gathered together. Yuan Xiaoman and the others couldn't help but show a happy smile after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang return to the team. Boss, you finally have time to come to us recently. Yuan Xiaoman walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side with a smile. The last time Bailey Hongzhuang left, they could see that Bailey Hongzhuang was in a hurry. This time, Bailey Hongzhuang was obviously a lot more indifferent. It should be that things have been handled. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled at the crowd. Before, she was full of thoughts about the safety of her parents. Even the last time she got together with everyone, she didn't pay too much attention. Today, seeing everyone full of spirit and ruddy complexion, she was happy from the bottom of her heart. Everyone has been in Tiangang sect for so long. Have you all adapted? Bailey Hongzhuang asked with a smile. Hongzhuang, you shouldn't ask us this question, but you should ask yourself. Dongfang Yu smiled as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. We've all stayed in Tiangang sect longer than you, but you didn't stay for long before leaving. It took you so long to come back. As soon as these words came out, everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with the same feeling. Speaking of which, Bailey Hongzhuang was the one who stayed in Tiangang sect the shortest among them. Bailey Hongzhuang came to a sudden realization. Thinking about it carefully, Dongfang Yu was right. She was indeed the person who stayed in Tiangang sect the shortest. Di Beiqian is the young lord of Tiangang sect. Hongzhuang is naturally used to staying here. Xia Jiqing joked. Smiles appeared on everyone's faces as they exchanged pleasantries. It had been a long time since they had gathered together like this. At this moment, they felt exceptionally happy. Hongzhuang, you won't be leaving this time, right? Dongfang Yu asked curiously. He didn't know why Hongzhuang left Tiangang sect, but he still hoped that Hongzhuang could cultivate well in Tiangang sect. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and said, I won't be leaving anytime soon. Her parents were now in Tiangang sect. Although the poison in their bodies had been detoxified, it would take some time for their bodies to completely recover. Therefore, during this time, she would not leave. Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's thoughtful expression, and the light in their eyes changed a bit. They really didn't know what Bailey Hongzhuang was busy with during this time and could only be secretly curious. It's good that you won't be leaving in a short time. Yuan Xiaoman smiled. Boss, the alchemist assessment will be held soon. I heard from Jiqing that Lu Qinyue is coming. As soon as these words came out, everyone's eyes fell on Gong Shaoqing. Thinking back, when they left Kanglan College, Lu Qinyue vowed that she would definitely come. They believed that when the alchemist assessment came, they would definitely be able to see Lu Qinyue. Chapter 2087. Feeling the gazes of the crowd, Gong Xiaoqing's face was a bit unnatural. Xiaoqing, Qin Wei is sincere to you. I think you shouldn't be stubborn. Just accept it. Dongfang Yu's long eyebrows slanted. His pair of peach blossom eyes were full of banter and joke, like peach blossoms in March. He and Gong Xiaoqing had been together for such a long time. Naturally, he also hoped that Gong Xiaoqing could live well. Lu Qingyue had liked Gong Xiaoqing for so many years, and with Gong Xiaoqing's cold temperament, no one except Lu Qingyue could soften him. What's more, Lu Qingyue's appearance and ability were extremely outstanding. A genius alchemist with such an outstanding appearance. Once she came to Tiangang Zone, who knew how many disciples would chase after her. He had stayed in Tiangang Zone for so long, and naturally had a certain understanding of the situation in Tiangang Zone. Although the number of female disciples in Tiangang Zone was not small, the number of male disciples was more. Here, beautiful female disciples were the target of countless male disciples. Tiangang Zone could not be compared to Tsanglan School. Although the strength of Tsanglan School's cultivators was good, they could not be compared to the disciples of Tiangang Zone. Since coming here, he had lost his previous pride, because this was originally a place where geniuses gathered. At first, they thought they were geniuses in Tsanglan School, but after coming to Tiangang Zone, they understood what a real genius was. All the advantages he had in the past had long since disappeared without a trace. In such a situation, if Gong Xiaoqing did not treat Lu Qingyue well, he was really worried that Lu Qingyue would run away with someone else. He did not want to see his brother regret it. Listening to Dongfang Yu's words, Xia Jiqing and the others could not help but laugh. Dongfang Yu was really a clown. Obviously, it was for Gong Xiaoqing's good, but it had a different flavor. Gong Xiaoqing glanced at Dongfang Yu, his iceberg face showing a look of disgust. Obviously, he did not want to pay attention to Dongfang Yu. Hong Zhuang, I heard that the alchemist assessment this time seems to be different from the past. Gong Xiaoqing looked at Bailey Hong Zhuang. He had heard other people vaguely talk about this before, but everyone did not know much about it. He felt that with Bailey Hong Zhuang's position in Tiangang sect, this matter should be understood. As Gong Xiaoqing's voice fell, everyone looked at Bailey Hong Zhuang. They had also heard some rumors about this, but they did not know the specifics. This time, it was related to Lu Qingyue. They didn't want any problems to happen midway. Bailey Hong Zhuang smiled when she saw how concerned everyone was. This matter won't affect Qingyue's return to the sect. As soon as these words came out, everyone was relieved. At least it did not have any effect on Lu Qingyue. Hong Zhuang, what's different about the alchemist assessment this time? Xia Jiqing asked. This time, before the alchemist assessment, the alchemists from our sect and the alchemists from the medicine sect will compete in an assessment competition. The problem is that in this assessment competition, the alchemist assessment will be the same as before. Bailey Hong Zhuang slowly explained. Alchemist competition. Everyone's faces were filled with doubt. They didn't understand what this alchemist competition was. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.